Hey guys, just wanted to be back for a shorter time in Scripture tonight, or this day, whatever time of day it is for you. I just know I spent a little bit longer than normal last couple of weeks, and so just wanted to try to focus it down. So this takes place right after the Israelites have left Egypt. They've come through the Red Sea, been delivered. They've had a few months. They've established the tabernacle, the worshiping community, and they're ready to enter the promised land. And as they're ready to enter, they decide to send 12 spies into that land to explore the land and bring a report. They're in the land for 40 days, exploring the land. They bring back produce and reports of just how incredible this land is. It is the promised land. It's the promise of God for his people. God had a great place for them. But then 10 of the 12 began to change the report and focus on the impossibilities, not the possibilities of God. They focused on fear, and they began to stir up a spirit of fear in the people, saying that the people in the land that they were going into were giants. They were all giants, and that we're like grasshoppers in their eyes. Their cities are huge, and they're all walled cities. There's no way we can take this land. Their report turned the tide, so the entire community, some millions of people, turn against God, against Aaron, Moses, Joshua, and Caleb, two of the spies who had a good report, and complain against God and begin to write their own narrative of what's going to happen to them. And that's when God responds. And this is the response that God brings. God says, the whole earth is going to be filled with the glory of God. And because these men have seen my glory in the mighty acts that I did in Egypt and in the wilderness, and have not heeded my voice, but rebelled against me these 10 times, they will not see the land that I am giving them, and they will not enter it. But Caleb, son of Jephunneh, has a different spirit in him, and he follows me wholeheartedly. He will see this land, and his descendants will inherit it. But now the Amalekites and the Canaanites live in the valleys nearby. Tomorrow, turn and go on the way towards the Red Sea. God says more. We're going to cover that next week. So that's what God says about these guys. Do you notice that they'd been in the land for 40 days? And can you imagine what might have felt like to Caleb and Joshua, who had seen the amazing beauty of the promised land, and have the whole tide turned against the possibility of going in because of the 10 guys they traveled with who caught a spirit of fear and then propagated it like propaganda. They just spread like gangrene. How might that have felt for Joshua and Caleb? Might they have felt frustrated or angry or upset? What might that have felt like for them to have this thing snatched away from them because of these 10? And what does God say to those 10? He says that the glory of the Lord is going to fill the whole earth. That's still a promise. The glory of the Lord will fill the whole earth. I have a dear brother who points out God's glory in little things all around in a day. The glory of the Lord will fill the whole earth. And because they'd seen God's glory and seen the mighty acts that God had done and not listened, heeded to God's voice, but rebelled against him these 10 times. Isn't it interesting that God says they rebelled against 10 times because there were 10 guys that gave the same report. So it was a multiplication of rebellion. They rebelled 10 times against him. They will not see this land. What do you learn about the character of God there? What do you learn? That God was so, it sounds like, jealous for his glory to be known. And he would not allow it to be stolen away by those that would propagate fear. He would not allow the purposes of God to be taken by those that would spread fear. This is a promise. And listen, that God says of Caleb, that Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, he'll see the land and his descendants will inherit it. What a promise that is as well. What a contrast between Caleb and the 10 that rebelled 10 times and wouldn't heed God's voice. So one of the things it might mean to have that different spirit and to follow God wholeheartedly is that Caleb did what? Listened, right? He's a listener. And what might this tell us about what God thinks of those that would spread fear like propaganda? I don't think God likes it. We live in a season of propaganda, my friends. A season of propaganda of fear. In the story, we see that God says that those 10 will not experience, will not see what God has promised, nor will those who spread fear today see what God has promised. But God has promised something marvelous. I just want to be a person like Caleb, don't you? Who has a heart that's so set on God and ears attuned to God's voice, who is a different spirit, not a spirit of fear, but the spirit of the living God. That's the spirit I want to have in me. That's the kind of spirit I want to manifest in my relationships with others. What about you? Don't give in to the propaganda of fear, my friends. Prepare yourself and tune yourself in for the glory of God to be revealed in this place. There's glory coming. There is revival coming. So keep open your eyes to see what God is going to do. God's at work in such a powerful way. Let's believe it. Let's trust it. And will you be a Caleb with me? Let's be Calebs. Men and women of God who listen for God's voice and do what he says. Blessings on you tonight.